Hello everyone, welcome back to You Enjoyed Life. I hope you all are doing well. Joshua here, and I'm sure you know Brothers Green is officially over. If you don't know what Brothers Green is, don't worry about it. But if you do, it's nice to have you over here. Mike and I have been doing Brothers Green for 8 years together, and our channel was around for 6 years, and it was an amazing experience. And recently I was putting out a bunch of videos talking about that I was going to be leaving Brothers Green. And on Friday, I put out my final video about leaving Brothers Green, and I ended up taking it down. It was a 45-minute long video. I was outside, I had my shirt off, and I was talking from the heart, but when I was editing the video, I felt like something was missing. I wasn't really sure what it was. I felt like something was off. I wasn't really sure what it was. And right when I put the video up, I got a lot of sort of polarizing comments. Some people really appreciated it, and of course, there were a lot of people that didn't. And it felt like very... there was more negativity than I'm used to seeing. I think a lot of people were just kind of like, just go already, you know, we get it, you're leaving, like how many leaving videos you're gonna do. And so after like a couple hours of having it up and getting a lot of engagement, I just realized that it wasn't meant for that channel. And I think that was the problem, that in my mind, in my heart, I was already done with Brothers Green, and even though I was putting out this video to try to let people know why, I wanted to share it here because I feel like anyone that's here is clearly obviously interested in, you know, why, what I'm doing, what I'm creating, and people there were kind of that were just there for Mike and we're sort of over it. So I wanted to do this video here, just kind of give you a background about why I left Brothers Green, but also how this can pertain to your own life. Change is a hard thing. Change is a really important thing. I know Mike's talking about it on Brothers Green now, which is now his channel, and I'm going to be talking about it here. But it's something that's been the most important thing in my life. And I wanted to give you a bit of a backstory, how I kind of created Brothers Green and all the amazing things that did in my life, but also the things that really led to me getting really depressed and struggling. You know, there was some years in Brothers Green where I was hit with some pretty bad depression. I deal with a lot of depression and anxiety, and it was something that I was trying to, I don't want to say hide, I talked about it in some videos, but it was something I was trying to rationalize, and it took me a long time to fully realize that the depression was part of, you know, what I was creating and why I didn't feel inspired and happy. And, you know, for me, I'm the kind of person who needs to be living a life of joy. I need to be living, you know, a life of happiness. That's why I created You Enjoy Life, because when I first started doing YouTube videos, it was fun. I was just doing whatever I wanted to do. I had, you know, no fears. There was no things I felt like I had to compete with. I was just doing it because I enjoyed it. But I was also in a band at the time, and band thing, that was my life. And YouTube was like this side thing that was just fun. And as it took off, I saw more and more opportunities to, you know, try new things and create new things. But over time, I kind of lost myself. So I'm going to share a bit about that story, just to give you a bit of a background. As a child, I was a very loving, very energetic, happy child. But I maybe had a little bit too much energy, maybe from my parents, and so I ended up getting put on medication pretty young. When I was about 9 years old, I was put on Ritalin, which, you know, is now pretty much the same thing as Adderall. So I was diagnosed with having ADD and later ADHD, and it put me in this box. I remember being in high school, I was just walking around like a zombie. And, you know, in the morning I would take medication, and then it'd be like this zombie, and then, you know, towards the end of the day it would start to wear off and my life would come back a little bit. But I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't even like food. Like, I would have this really simple lunch my mom would pack me, and I wouldn't even eat it. I'd take a bite of an apple and a little sip of water, and just food just tasted bland. It tasted terrible. So that was like the way my palate tasted, was the way I felt. I just was this robot, and I got like straight A's pretty much, and I worked really hard, but I didn't really speak to anyone and didn't make that many friends. Outside of school, I was sports, and I had friends and stuff, but I just kind of kept to myself. So when I went to college, I didn't really have a dream. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no passion in life. You know, I had just started playing guitar, and I really, you know, enjoyed guitar, something I loved, and it was a hobby, but it was never something I was like, oh yeah, I can do this for a living. I was not a musical kid. I just loved it. And at least I thought I wasn't musical. But I ended up meeting this guy in college. We became best friends. We started a band together, and eventually called Canon Logic. And for 10 years, I was in just that band. It took over my life. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was lit up. I was joyful. I threw out my Adderall medication about a year or two into the band because I realized it was ruining me. Actually, my lead singer wrote a song, and he's like, can I borrow your pill shaker? And he was like using it in the song. And the chorus was shut you down like a bottle of drugs in the morning. And when I asked him what it was about, he said, it's about you, and it's about what happens when you take your medication. And it just, something clicked in me. I was like, wow. I threw the medication out, never touched it again. And all of a sudden I realized, you know, I had been this person who couldn't focus. my whole life. I was like, oh, I can't focus, I have to take medication. But then I was like, wait a minute, I've been spending, 10, 12 hours a day just working on music focused in this. I was like, wow, I can focus. It's just that, the things I was focusing on in school weren't necessarily right for me. They weren't in my heart. So that changed my whole perspective. That was the first big shift in my life where I was like, wow, I had this belief about myself. I had this label put on myself, and I just completely destroyed that label and could be whatever I wanted to. So music was opening me up in so many different ways. It was making life fun. I was, shaving mohawks. I was, wearing different types of clothing. I was coming home with dyed hair and just like doing something that was different. And being in college and knowing exactly what I wanted to do made college like this stepping stone. I couldn't wait to get away. A lot of kids want to, they're in college and they get stuck in there and they want to stay and they are scared about the real world. I could not wait to get out into the real world because I knew we had this whole body of songs I just wanted to play. And I saw our music being so big and inspiring so many people and being this huge thing. So we all moved to Brooklyn together and we had the most amazing time. Like, we were sleeping on air mattresses for the first month in this loft we found in Williamsburg, which I didn't realize was going to be like the hipster artistic center of the world. I had no idea what a hipster was at the time, honestly. Now look at me. And so we moved there and it was just music. I had a little bit of money saved up and I decided to pull it out of the stock market, and then and then basically the economy crashed and I had no money, so I'm like just scraping by on a little bit that I had, and I'm using creative ways to cook now because I'm like, okay, I can't afford to go out and eat. New York's really expensive. Let me cook. So I start figuring out all these fun recipes. And in high school, that was another thing I should say. I did start cooking in high school. Music and food kind of actually entered my life around the same time. And there were just these two passions that I had. But again, both things I never actually imagined that I could do. Food felt a little bit more like, before the music thing, I was like, oh, I could do this. But when the music took over my life, it was like that was it, and anything else was just to support that. So food was a support for the music because I didn't have a lot of money. I was broke, so I was going to the market, and I remember getting these flatbread pizzas, and I would get cheese and pepperoni and sauce, and then make these like 3-minute little flatbread pizzas. And my roommates started making it, my neighbors started making it, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. So I ended up starting this blog called Why Eat In, which is all about just living, living in New York without spending any money on food, essentially. And that led to me challenging myself with different things and trying new things and realizing that I had no money, but I was having this great life. And that was another big lesson that I learned. I started to realize that people in New York, no matter how much money they had, they were broke because they always had this mindset of growth, more and more and more. So the minute they got a raise, they got a nicer place and a nicer car and started eating out more because they want to keep, now they're in that next level echelon, they want to live like that. So in turn, they're in debt and they're always stressed for money and they're working really hard. So when I realized that, I'm like, okay, if everyone's equally broke, it doesn't matter how much money I have. I just need to enjoy myself. So I started cooking for people. My friends were starting to hire me like, hey, I love your food. Can you deliver me weekly lunches? Or can you cook this private dinner party for me? And that started to take off pretty quickly. And then Mike ended up moving in to help out because he was in college. And I was like, hey, I'm looking for some help. And he had just graduated and he was looking to do food. He was really passionate about food. And I was like, you could go home and cook with our parents, friends, or whatever, all these things, or you could just come with me and we could rock it out. I got an extra room and I'm living this awesome life there's musicians everywhere. So we started cooking together, and around that time, a friend of ours, Adam Sayowitz, is a really talented filmmaker. At the time, though, he had just graduated from NYU Film School and didn't really know what to do. And he just started filming us. He had this little 7D. It was the first DSLR that had HD in it. At the time, it was a big deal. Now every camera has it, but at the time, it was this kind of revolutionary thing that a photography camera could have really high quality video capabilities, and it was very personal. So he was just kind of filming us, and we ended up creating a show called Unork, which YUNORK. If you go unork.com, you can actually see the old videos. And we were just having fun. My brother was he was trying to make this sort of cooking show, and I was just kind of having fun and being an older brother and playing around and poking fun at him and being silly and playing music. And we just started cutting up what we were doing in life, these parties we were throwing in bands and music and food and exploring markets and stuff. We started cutting it up and putting it together into these episodes without thinking about it much. Our parents and some friends were watching it. And someone that actually Mike went to college with saw it, and he was part of this network called Electus, and they had just gotten a grant from YouTube to make this cooking show. And they were like, we love you guys, your food, your music, your hipsters, millennial wasn't even a word at the time. It's like, we want to do a show with you. And it was like, cool. And now all of a sudden, it wasn't a lot of money, but for us it was like, whoa, we're getting paid to shoot something. And before we knew it, a camera crew was coming into our apartment, and there was just all this stuff happening. And right around that time, we were on Rachel Ray to do this competition against Nick Jonas, I remember. And it was the first time we had ever been on camera, and they brought a crew in as well. And I just remember actually recently discovered an email from a friend and was telling her about this experience and how, we were on Rachel Ray and what it was like. And I kind of was shocked to read this email that I discovered from 7-8 years ago. And I was talking about how it went really well, but they really wanted us to play up the drama. And at first I was really against it. I was like, because at the time I was like kind of becoming Buddhist. I'll talk about that in a second, but I was really against it. I didn't want to create this false drama. But then I realized that what I could do is I could sort of take this piece of myself, this sort of older brother, cocky, confident, whatever, older brother, who's also like fun and loving and goofy. I could take this piece of myself and kind of create this character and this identity on camera. And then over time, as we build our own show, I can maybe like break this character down and sort of break my own reality down and create something new. So yeah, just to back up a little bit, I got into Buddhism and it was changing my life at the time. And this is even before Mike moved in. I was practicing Buddhism. I was practicing meditation and understanding how you can condition yourself and change. And it was completely opening my life up to who I was and who I could be. Because I realized there was a lot of things in my life that I had created and made up to believe to be true, and they were actually holding me back. They were keeping me depressed. And what happened was right before I found Buddhism, I got really depressed. And I don't want to say I was suicidal, but I didn't want to live anymore. I just had no interest in living. There was like, there's no point to life. Why am I living? Even though I had all these passions, I just felt like hopeless. And then I discovered Buddhism, and I saw that there was this really beautiful way you could look at that to realize that, yeah, maybe life is like quote unquote meaningless. Like maybe all things are made up and subjective and this and that, but you can actually within that create this amazing life for yourself. So I had to have this mindset. And I felt a little reluctant initially when we started Brothers Green and when we got picked up to kind of create this character. But then I saw, okay, here are two brothers. Mike and I are very different. He's sort of like the forward-thinking, or I should say, like he's like become like the straight man. He's like the guy who's kind of knows what he wants to do. He's got a plan. He went to school for architecture. He's got a plan for a dish, and he can make it look beautiful and creative and figure this stuff out. And me, I'm just kind of going with the flow, throwing things in, having fun, and kind of messing with his style a little bit. And we could have fun as brothers, like being kind of the odd couple a little bit, like these odd brothers who are so different. But at the end of the day, whenever we would cook, when the food would come together, we might fight the whole way through, but when the food came together, it was like this beautiful thing. And, because I had this sort of Buddhist mindset, it was easy for anyone that I was meeting to create these really, open, trustworthy, passionate, connected relationships. But with my brother, because we had so much history, and before Brothers Green, we were like enemies. Like him and I growing up, we just fought all the time. And then when I went to college and he started coming up and we were partying together and I was in a band, it started to become like more, we started to become friends. So by the time we were living together, we were friends, but there was still that sort of underground, I think some frustration, maybe some resentment, some different emotional things that come up with siblings. As I've seen a lot of people comment, like I could never work with my brother or sister, we would kill each other. So we were able to take this brotherly thing and turn it into something new. And we did our show on Hungry, that was that YouTube channel for 3 years, or 3 seasons. And by second season, they ended up giving us, they were like, listen, we don't really know what to do with y'all. We just want you to do your own show. You produce the show. We're going to give you the budget. You're going to produce everything. We just want it to be called Midnight Munchies and kind of do like a late night theme show. And we're like, okay, sounds good. So we just ran with it. And it was in that that kind of construct that I realized, like, wow, we were trying to do, our initial show was more like homemade. We were doing homemade pizzas and pastas, but there's so many cooking channels that do that. And I grew up watching Food Network, and I loved watching Emeril and different people and Guy Fieri and stuff. But I always felt like there was this limit because most people would watch it and, there was these fancy kitchens that were big and everything was always clean, and there's food fairy bringing out like the magic pie. They put it in the oven, 2 seconds later it's done. And when I started seeing about that world, like where, there's food stylists, that's actually how I met my wife. She walked into my door one day. She was one of the food stylists on our first shoot ever. And I was just like blown away, and we fell in love. It's a whole nother story. But when I started to see that food TV was this really like kind of weird false reality in a lot of ways, where you have this whole crew of people putting something on. The person that you're watching oftentimes, I'm not saying always, but oftentimes has no real connection to the food. They have a team of people figuring out the recipes for them, telling them what to do, sort of step by step, prepping everything, making it look perfect. Then the person is there on set and they kind of are a little bit of a talking head, and they flip the thing and then they go to commercial, and then someone comes in and cleans everything up and changes stuff and brings them the nicer cooked one or whatever. And that just didn't really feel like right to me. I felt like, that was a big part of why a lot of people weren't cooking. So when we did Midnight Munchies, I quickly started to see that there was this opportunity to inspire people out there who didn't have a medium for that. And even on YouTube, there were cooking videos, but there was nothing geared towards people that were struggling, with money, or didn't have a big kitchen, or were in college, or just like never thought they could cook, or maybe people were addicted to fast food and wanted to learn how to make it themselves. So all of a sudden I put myself in this box, and it was amazing because putting yourself in constraints actually allows you to be super creative. If you have limitless possibilities, it's like walking into a supermarket that has every food and everything ever. It can be overwhelming if you don't know what your container is. You can just buy anything. But when you have like a goal, it's like, okay, I've got a budget, or I've got this kind of theme of food that I want to cook. Well, then all of a sudden it just opens up this whole new world for you. So we put ourselves in this little bit of a box, and we said, hey, we're doing this Midnight Munchies thing, late, creative, cheap, easy eats. And it was in our second season of doing that where we did this video called 4 Meals, $4, 4 Ingredients, and everything changed. So I did that flatbread pizza that I talked about. We did these banana and egg pancakes. We did this milkshake, and we did a couple different things. And I just remember the comments. People were like, I've never cooked a day in my life. I went to my fridge, I had those ingredients, I made it, and my mind is blown. And seeing that was when I realized that everything in food could be different. Because again, at the time, now everything changes. There's tasty videos that are a minute long, and there's all these creative hack budget. At the time, that wasn't a thing on YouTube. That wasn't a thing online. So I saw this opportunity, and Mike and I talked about it a lot, and it's like, we can create this whole world for people that gets them inspired to do something different. So we put ourselves in that space, and I think in doing so, I created a bit of a character. And there's videos where I'm definitely more myself than others, but YouTube is this weird thing where, you've got like two sides of it. Like there's the you, and you're trying to be honest and passionate, and you're talking like I'm now. But then, I would also play into a character when I was with my brother, and I would something would sort of turn on and spark in me that I could be silly and weird and kind of act like dumb and like I don't know what I'm doing. Even though like in my, day-to-day life, I was meditating and, like I said, practicing mindfulness and all these different things and growing my life. When I would step on camera, I could kind of like reignite that like kind of older brother who's just playing around and having a good time. And that there's always that piece of me, but I was expanding, and I didn't really know how to share that so much. So after that channel on YouTube ended, we started our own channel, and it was a great opportunity just to start to learn how to actually film. Because at the time I wasn't filming, I wasn't editing. We would sit in edits, but I had to learn how to film, I had to learn how to edit and do everything. So Mike and I started creating our own channel together. And then not that long after that, we got picked up for a show by MTV. And that was just like, what is going on? And we did that for 3 years. We filmed a ton of episodes. It was Brothers Green Eats was the name of the show. It was an international show, so it aired around the world, and we were cooking for, Lil Dicky and Ed Sheeran and, David Hasselhoff and all these big celebrities around the world going to cool events and just having this crew and having the time of our lives. But even that started to feel unaligned. I was starting to realize, like, what am I doing? Because when I made the choice to go to MTV, I ended up quitting my band, because all the while I was doing the band thing. But I was starting to actually feel the same way with my band. It was really interesting. As our band was changing, I was starting to lose interest in the band. I love the music, I love performing, I love nothing more than being in a venue, and this has always felt like my thing. People would be standing there like this. Not everyone, but these like hipsters who were kind of like too cool for school. And my goal was at the end to have them like dancing and free and wild. And that's what would happen, because I had this I don't care attitude. I would just show up when I played live, like the music just comes through me. I'm not worried. There's no fear. It's just like pure energy and essence. And after I play, I feel incredible. I just released an album you can check out called You and the Everybody Band. And if you click below, Spotify, and to me, music is this way to deal with stress, to deal with anxiety, to feel more connected. Because when I play, I feel like everything is perfect and right. And after I play and I perform and dance, like nothing can bother me. But it's before that. It's when I don't allow myself to go to those spaces that I'm like this weird, awkward, uncomfortable person. I kind of joke that English is my third language, because dancing and singing are my first two. And so anyhow, I was starting to feel really disconnected from my band, and it was right around the MTV thing, and I had to make a choice. Do I stay in the band or do I leave? And for 10 years, I had never allowed myself to take a vacation for more than like 7 days or 8 days or something, because I was so dedicated to this band. It was full time. I never made a penny from it. I mean, I worked so hard and never made a single dollar. All the money always went back to the band. And we were having some success. We were selling out venues between 300 and 600 people and getting stuff on commercials. But it was still like, I was seeing this distinction between music and between what I loved, like the pop industry, and trying to write like a hit single and try to dress a certain way and look a certain way, and just what I wanted to do with music, which was different. So I had created a solo project at that time, and at the end of the day, I was like, I could just be playing music with 3 friends in a room and be happy. I don't need to be in this band. I feel really like creatively very different than everybody else. And what I saw about Brothers Green was, because I didn't care, because I was just doing it, I wasn't so attached to it. I wasn't trying to pitch. We never pitched shows. People were just coming to us. They were like, hey, I really like what you're doing. I want to sign you. It's like, okay, cool. So it was never like I was trying too hard to force it, or like I was too attached to, hey, this has to happen. If it doesn't, I'm never going to be happy. I just did it because I loved it. And the amazing thing about that for me was realizing that, like, when I am not afraid, when I'm just doing something out of passion, and everything was very clear with Brothers Green, the recipes, everything, I was working really hard, but they were all coming so simple. The ideas were just flowing. I was like, when I'm not in this state of fear, like it felt like with the band, everything just completely flows out and is simple and has success. So that is one thing I want to share with you too. Like, when you come from a place of fear, when you come from a place of like, I can't do this, or I need to be like this, and comparing myself to other people, like, that's when you get stuck. But when you trust yourself and you say, you know what, I'm going to do something that's different. I'm going to do something that feels right to me in my heart. Even if other people don't agree with it, or there's nothing like it out there, I'm just going to do it. That's when things shift. And I saw that was happening with Brothers Green. We were just like taking risks, trying new things, and growing. And I remember a little bit after that, I put out this video, and I wasn't even thinking too hard. I was just like, had this idea. I was like, wouldn't it be cool to do a video to see what it would be like if you how to like live on $3 a day? So if I took, $21, went to the market and bought everything I could imagine, and then with $21 and just lived on that for an entire week. And that video went nuts. It went viral. Now I think it's got like over 4 million views or something. And I didn't expect it. I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is going to be a viral video. My brain just didn't think that way. It was just like, this is cool. And it went viral, and all of a sudden our audience doubled overnight. And now is in a really interesting place, because a lot of people have been following us for a long time and kind of knew us, but now half our audience is basically new. And it was a big shift for us. I think we went from like 200 to 400,000 viewers or something, like, within a course of a couple of weeks or something. And that was a big shift. And since then, there was some viral videos before that, and there was been plenty after that, but that was the first big one. And what I saw was like, I was starting to see a lot of YouTube channels come out at the time, and we would talk to these networks, and they'd say, hey, you need to format your channel. You need to have videos that are 3 minutes long or 6 minutes long. You need to have, say, this at the beginning and this at the end, and this on the thumbnail, and there's all these things, and we have the analytics to prove it and everything, this and that. And I was just like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do and trust that. And I remember putting out a video called Beginner's Guide to Cooking, and it was 45 minutes long. It was on a little GoPro like this one. I just turned the camera on. I had no plan. I just started cooking. And it was really chill. I wasn't being weird and wacky. I was just being very relaxed and comfortable. And I made this meal, and I just talked about the basics of cooking. And the video ended up doing extremely well, and it got a ton of views, but also people watched it for a long time. And that was another moment of like, you know what? There's other people out there telling me that they know what to do, and they have the analytics and all this stuff to prove it. But I just did something that felt right in my heart, and it worked. And then I started seeing other channels starting to experiment with longer videos. So I was just like, I can't be kept in a box unless I put myself there. If somebody tries to put me into a box, I'm going to break out of it. It's actually a big thing I really respect about Jim Carrey. He's always breaking out of boxes. That's something he talks about a lot. Like, when people thought he was the goofy slapstick comedian, he broke out of that and became a serious drama actor. And like, there's all these things. He used to be an impressionist, and then he was an amazing impressionist, and then left that to do stand-up, and then left that. Like, he's just always breaking out and trying new things because he doesn't want to be defined. But when I put myself in a box for the sake of creativity, that felt okay. So we did that video, and things are going well on YouTube, and this time we're still doing our MTV show, and we're just trying to do both, and we ended up getting, at least I got really burnt out. And I remember around the time MTV ended, that was a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, I was just feeling like something was shifting in me. And we had been doing Brothers Green for a while at that point. And I was just feeling really stuck because I didn't have the band anymore. I was playing some gigs and stuff on the side and writing music, but I was feeling like something was not right. And when I moved to Colorado, I made the choice to move to Colorado. My brother and I, like, we had done some like sort of brother therapy or like business therapy or something, and just trying to work on our relationship, because what I realized was that we weren't, as being business partners, we sort of lost being brothers. And right before we started Brothers Green, we were becoming close friends. And then all of a sudden, working together, we were talking all the time, we were seeing each other, we were traveling the world, and we had fun. You know, we have similar interests, and we would laugh, and we'd be silly and have a good time and eat great food. But outside of business, we didn't hang out. We had no capacity to hang out. I had no capacity just to call him just to talk and say what's up. We might have a business call, and then, you know, how's it going at the beginning? So how was your weekend? And then it's like, all right, let's get down to business. And we were always talking about business, and we lost our brother connection. So when I moved here, I was starting to feel like my whole life was changing. And I was beginning to realize that I felt like the person that I didn't want to be, the person that I was so good at avoiding being all these years in Brothers Green, was the person that I had become. Because over time, I started to realize that I was starting to format my channel. We had, you know, at this point we had lots of brand deals, and we had an agent, and we were working with a network on YouTube eventually. And I felt more and more constrained, and like we worked with some great brands that I love working with, and some other brands that, you know, that were maybe mistakes. I don't say mistakes, but I learned my lesson. And it was really hard for me, because now I felt like legally and things, and as our audience got bigger, I had to be a certain way. And Mike was doing videos that he was passionate about, and I was trying to do videos I was passionate about, but my heart just wasn't in it. And I was starting to realize that food was, you know, his life. That's his dream, and he's talking about that more. That's all he wanted to do. He always wanted a cooking show. He loved making food videos. But for me, I was like, wait a minute. This isn't even necessarily my dream. I did this because I felt really inspired to. I did this because the universe was like, hey, this is something you're going to do now, and you're going to, you know, create this new wave of cooking. And like, I'm not just in any way saying I'm responsible or Brothers Green's responsible, but I do know that when I look back at the time, like we were at least helping in creating this movement of getting a new audience, a new generation of people cooking, in a very laid back way where people didn't feel intimidated. So that was great, but I became too attached to that and started to think that that was my dream, but that wasn't even my dream. That was just something that I loved doing, was really good at, and had success and was grateful for. But I was starting to find that I wasn't even like moving to Denver, making new friends, and I wasn't even necessarily that excited to show my new friends my videos, because I didn't feel like they were really aligned with who I was. And feeling almost, I don't want to say embarrassed, but there's some videos since I moved to Colorado that I really enjoyed, and I felt really passionate about, and I felt really like in it and reinvigorated. But a lot of them I felt like I was phoning it in, and I do want to apologize to anyone that was, you know, kind of seeing that and maybe noticing something was off, because I was starting to feel really depressed and realizing that this thing that I was doing, this thing that everyone was telling me was so amazing. Like, you're making money doing YouTube, you're successful, and you have this gigantic following, and, you know, people were telling me it was this great thing, and I started to believe it. You know, I started to say, well, I just need to be grateful. I just need to have gratitude and be fortunate, man, and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And deep down, I knew it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And that was a huge struggle. And I just want to say, it's not to say I don't love cooking. I do love cooking, and there's going to be cooking videos on here. And like I said, there's going to be music videos and all kinds of different stuff. But what I did not love was feeling like I had to format myself into something and force like very specific or trendy ideas. And all of a sudden now there's, you know, these big companies that are paying lots of money and building out these big YouTube channels. And when at the time it didn't feel like I was competing with anyone, it felt like I was just doing my thing. Then YouTube became about the algorithms and about the trends, and I just felt so out of that world, but felt like I had this big audience, and if I didn't make a video that was trendy or a video that had a good thumbnail, that a lot of people wouldn't see it, and it was messing with me. It was making me depressed, because I'd worked really hard in a video and it just didn't have the response I wanted. And I started to realize that the audience was so split, that Mike has a very specific audience of people that he brings, and I have a very specific audience of people that I bring, and our audience was so different, and some people just wanted what Mike was doing. And I think because he was a little more focused on what he wanted, and it was more in the food space. It was easier for him to keep doing that. For me, it became more of a struggle because here I am like trying to do these things that didn't fit into Brothers Green, and I was feeling like, why are people boxing me into this thing that I'm not? Why are they thinking I'm this person that I'm not? So yeah, I became extremely depressed, and being in Colorado has been amazing, making friends and building this life together with my wife, but making videos is really hard, really, really, really hard. So I went to Spain in December, and my brother and I had a talk, and he's like, I can tell that you're not inspired by this. He's like, I'd be willing to work out a deal so I could take over the channel. And I just want to say, I'm not going to give away the deal points, but some people are like, this is really unfair. How come Mike gets the channel? First off, I get Brothers Green Instagram account, which I'm going to be changing the name soon, but for now it's still Brothers Green. So I'm taking over the Instagram account. Of course, YouTube was our big money maker and everything, but Mike and I worked out a fair deal so that he could take over the account and then I could go start fresh and do my own thing. And it felt really right. I felt so much more free now. Oh my God. But right when he said that, right when he's like, I'd be willing to take this over from you, I just said yes. And for someone who had been putting in, 7, 8 years to doing this Brothers Green thing together, to know that my decision was so clear and so easy was just a good reminder that this was not where I was anymore. I didn't want to work with my brother anymore. I didn't want to, I never signed up for it. It just happened. Not like we sat down one day like, how cool would it be to work together? It just sort of happened and we saw the benefit of it. But it wasn't a dream of mine, and our dreams weren't the same. And I was starting to get to a place where I was compromising my own dreams, not just for the fans, but for him. And because I knew that he had a thing, and for me to be my full expression of myself wouldn't work with him being his full expression of himself and vice versa. It's like, imagine having two CEOs of one company who are completely different, have completely different visions of what they want. And maybe, like I said, when we started out, our vision was aligned. But once you know what you want and once you have some success, it's like, I'm gonna tell you right now, success, fame, money, financial, well, all that stuff, it doesn't mean anything. There's another Jim Carrey quote where he says, I'm paraphrasing this, he's like, but I wish everyone could achieve great success and wealth and fame to know that it's not the answer. And it's like, that is exactly how I feel. I'm not saying that it doesn't help in ways. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate it. I love the fans out there, everyone's subscribers. It's been amazing. I have nothing wrong with having more financial stability than I had when I was in Brooklyn. I was, living paycheck to paycheck, barely surviving. But those things in themselves don't bring you anything. They say people that win the lottery, if they were miserable before they win the lottery, they're probably gonna be miserable after. If they were happy before, they'll probably be happy after. So these things can help you, but you still need to be happy. You still need to feel good about them, because there are a lot of people, I'm sure with a lot of wealth who are not happy, and same with fame. So none of those things matter to me. No matter what people were telling me how great this was, even though I started to believe it, I realized in Spain, this is not me. I was the first time I stepped back from doing videos in a while, and I was like, wow, I just want to be myself. And I created some videos I was inspired by in Spain, and were really fun to learn new things about a new culture. But the minute my brother said I would take the channel over from you and we could work out a deal, I said yes. And then it took 6 months to figure out the deal. It took a long time. But it was so easy and so simple because I knew in my heart it wasn't right. And I think there's a piece of me that felt like maybe I was helping my brother support his dream. I'm not saying this is real, because he's done a fantastic job on his own. But I think there was a piece of me feeling like, well, Brothers Green is this thing that exists because of both of us, and I know this cooking thing is his life, and I didn't want to leave it because I want to make sure that he has success and all this stuff. But there's also a piece of me that knows that because it was successful, I was really afraid to leave it, because what if? What if I leave this big thing that's, allowed me to buy a home and to have this influence around the world and inspire people and have something to attach to? Because, there's something to when I'm at a party or I'm meeting people, when people find out that I have this thing, it changes their whole mood. And I don't like that. I don't like meeting someone who's not interested in talking to me, and then the moment they find out I have this channel, their whole thing changes. But there is something to having, to writing emails to companies and different people and saying, hey, I've got this big subscriber base. It gets you things. I've gotten a lot of free stuff. I've gotten a lot of great connections and stuff. And it made me, and some part of me, feel good having this thing. But I realized it was all false. It was all a lie. And I was too scared to let it go, because what if I let it go and then I never had that success again? What if I let it go and I never achieved anything, great again, or I never was able to make money and I had to get a regular job? And I had all these fears come up, and I was sitting in those fears. But when I was in Spain, it all became very clear, and I realized that there's something much bigger for me. There's something waiting that is my true expression of myself. And now that I have the confidence, I can film, I can make content, I can just be myself and share this life. And I'm also different. When we started doing college cooking and stuff, and we started Brothers Green, and now I live in Denver, and have I'm married, and I have a dog and a yard and a house. It's a different life, and I still like living this outside of the box life, but it's a different kind of one. And I want to inspire people to do that on this channel, and that's really what it's about for me. And this is I had filmed my original Why I Left Brothers Green last week, but now today, I'm officially done, as of yesterday actually, officially done with Brothers Green. I have nothing left to film. I'm off the channel, completely done, and it feels so good, and it feels so freeing. I'm so grateful for all the fans out there. But one thing that I really took away, and this is another thing I learned from Jim Carrey, I forget where he got it from, but depression, the word is rooted in deep rest, depression, deep rest. And it's this idea that when we're pretending to be someone that we're not, when we're sort of playing like a false character, our body gets really heavy, our body gets really tired. We feel like, if you ever had depression before, you feel like this blanket, this weight around you. At least for me, it's kind of like, yeah, okay. Yeah, like I just don't feel joy or excitement for anything. And it's because when you're living a false character, and I'll speak for myself, when I was living this fake version of myself, and not just on YouTube, but in life, going after something that didn't feel right anymore, my body just couldn't handle it. So I would turn on the camera, and I'm not someone who's just got like, hey, welcome back. Like when you watch videos, when I feel good, when I have energy, it's because I have energy and feel good. When I'm more chill, it's because I'm more chill. When I'm more down, it's because I can't fake things. And there are people that have shows and they just turn on, no matter what they're feeling, they're always the same. And that's just not something I can do. So for me, like when I'm feeling depressed, I turn into someone that I don't enjoy and don't like. So now, like having that weight lifted, not having to be attached to this Brothers Green thing is so exciting. And it's great to get to create new content. I'm already working on some cooking stuff right now, working on a lot of gardening stuff. And music videos. I have so much to create and share that I'm excited about, and again, I want to only create from a place of passion, excitement, and joy. And that's why you enjoy life. It's about being in joy, being in a state of joy. And I'm not saying that you're always going to be in a state of joy, but what my dedication to y'all out there is, anyone watching, is everything that you watch, you're going to take something away. It's going to put a smile on your face. It's going to make you dance and move and feel good. It's going to teach you something new about cooking that you didn't know before, or about life, or about anything in the world that I'm experiencing. So that's what this channel is all about. I just want to help you get more tuned into your own personal joy so that you can feel good, because I truly believe that everyone deserves to feel the best that they can based on who they are. Life is a journey. It's always changing. I have so many more changes to go. I'm going to be continually growing and learning new things about myself, and I'm here to share the real truth, not just the fun highlights of life on Instagram, but the things that are really going on in my life and how I'm overcoming them, how I'm dealing with them, what I'm learning, and it's all there. So it's going to be all there. It's just this You Enjoy Life is the full expression of me, and I cannot wait to share more with y'all. Thank you again so much for watching this. If you haven't yet, you can of course subscribe. But at the end of the day, just make sure that you're doing you. And whatever that means, trust that whatever place you're in right now is okay. Everything, even the hard things, they're bridges to get you somewhere bigger. And I'm going to be talking more about that in later videos. But for now, have a beautiful, blessed, magical day, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.